Hi guys. This week we are going to talk about log properties, right? So you should have previously watched the video on going from log form to exponential form. And here we're going to talk about a lot of different log properties and how we can apply them. Once you get the hang of them, they're pretty straightforward. And we'll use them a lot next week when we start solving. So we want to make sure that we are comfortable with the actual properties and what they mean. So let's look at some of the more basic properties. So this first one, we have log of some number, base a, right? So that number is our base. Log of base a of 1 is equal to what? So this is like saying a to the what is going to give us 1. And so the only thing that will ever get us 1 for all a is 0. So we know that whenever there is a 1 here, it is always going to equal 0. Our next property we have here is when we have log a of a. Notice the base and the number there are the same. And so that's like saying a to the what power is going to get us a. And so the only thing that could go in that question mark is a 1 now. So anytime you have the same base as the same value, you know that that's always going to equal 1. So these kind of like cancel out in this section, right? So they'll just be a 1 as long as you have the same base and power. Next we get over here. We have base a to the same a and then some power x. Okay, so whenever we have something to a power here, we can pull that power out front. So bring our x out front, and we're left with x times log a of a. And the previous one we just did was that log a of a is 1. So that takes us to x times 1, which just gets us to x back up here, right? It's x times x, or x times 1 equals x. So anytime you have these same bases and an exponent, we always know that the value of this log will be that exponent. Next, we have log base a of x is equal to log base a of y. And if this is true, because they have the same log and the same base, we know that x has to equal y. Right? So it's basically like subtracting off the log a's, and we're left with x equals y. So those are some really basic ones. We won't use those that often, but they kind of help us lead into our next ones we're going to talk about that we'll use the most. So our first one here is going to be, you're either going to be expanding or condensing these using these different properties. And one key thing that we make sure we keep in mind is that all of these properties, the only way we can use these properties is if our logs have the same bases. Right, so that's very important. So like in here, we've got base A, so we can follow this property. So if we're adding two logs that have the same base, we can simplify that or condense it into log A, right, that base, bad A, log A of B times C. Right, so all we do is we condense it down to 1 and we multiply our two large values there. Okay, so let's look at one. So here, addition, right? Same base. We make sure they have the same base before we start. So there's addition, so we can condense that as log base 2 of xy. If you want to put a multiplication in, you can. Otherwise, xy is the same as x times y. Okay, so that's condensing, right? We took two logs and we turned it into one log. And so let's talk about expanding. We want to take one log and turn it into 2. So notice here we've got multiplication. And so multiplication, we're kind of going backwards, right? Multiplication tells us we have to go to addition. So we have log base b of x plus log base b of p. Right, we took one log that showed us multiplication.